Hey Enticer enthusiasts, I thought I would do a quick tech time video on how to check the ignition timing on your 77 or 78 Enticer 250 with points ignition. This is probably one of the most overlooked things to check on the ignition system for these machines because the first 2 years do have points ignition. It's pretty easy to check. Today I have the engine out of the machine because unfortunately a mouse moved in over the summer and started packing some foam and straw and crap it dragged in there, and I thought I'd just take it all apart and clean it out. I took the cowling off and I did find some foam that had been packed in, and I wanted to make sure that there was none inside the engine, and there wasn't. So I thought I would show how I check the ignition timing on these machines. I use a multimeter. I've got my fluke here. I set it on ohms. I have a cable made up that goes to this terminal on the wiring harness. If you just have leads, you can stick your leads in there. What we are measuring for is when the points open. We need to know that the points open at the correct time. And if we look on the flywheel, we can see there are two nubs. One indicates the top of the piston, and there's another one on the other side that indicates the bottom. I'm sure that the bottom one is on there just for balance. And we want to make sure that the top one lines up with this mark here on the case. So on mine, I have it marked top. And so if the ignition timing is correct on my meter over here, it's going to read really close to 0 ohms. And that is when the points are closed. And we want to find out when the points open. And when the points open, it's going to read about 2 ohms, 3 ohms, something like that. There are a lot of different ways to do this. Some people use a light. I use a multimeter because I have one. So over here, we're going to watch. Let me see if I can get the meter and the timing mark in at the same time. So we see that the points are still closed. And as we get close, right there is where they open. They open a little bit earlier. Sometimes you have to rock it back and forth to find exactly where they open. Right there. So if we look here, we can see we're really close. I tend to set the points a little bit advanced. And that's for two reasons. The one reason is because when I used to trail ride this machine a lot and put on, 3, 4, 5, 600 kilometers a year, I didn't want to have to adjust the points all the time. So I would set it a little bit advanced, because as they wear, they're going to wear retarded, and that would give me a bit more time between adjusting the points. And adjusting the points, that procedure's in the service manual. It's a pain to do. So that's why I set it a little bit advanced. And the other reason is right now this machine mostly just gives rides to kids and pulls around like toboggans and stuff. So advanced timing gives you a little bit more on the bottom end. So that's the reason why I set it just a little bit advanced. You might notice that there's a dial gauge that I've put in. The other way to check the timing is with a dial gauge. And this procedure is in the service manual. You know, if you can use the dial gauge if you don't have the flywheel on. That's one way to set the points, is to take the flywheel off and adjust them and then put the flywheel back on. Like that's a bit of a pain in the butt in itself. But I just thought I would have this on here. You know, using the indicator on the flywheel on the fan here is just as accurate. But I thought I would show that you can use a dial gauge, and the specification for the timing using a dial gauge is that you want the points to open 67 thousandths of an inch before top dead center. Now, how do you do that? Well, you find where top dead center is. And what I do is that I set the top dead center to be 67 thou. So I'm going to find top dead center. And it's right there. And sometimes, so I'd zeroed it out before. I don't have it real tight, but sometimes these cheap gauges drift a bit. So we'll zero it out, 67. And then when we go back to our mark here on the flywheel, it's going to show that is lining up. It's going to be 0 up here, real close. And where my points open, it's going to be just before that. So right there. And you know, I'm a few thousandths early. And I think that's fine. Anyways, that's how you check your ignition timing on a 77 or a 78 Enticer 250.